Hello, and welcome to this special episode on the crisis facing businesses across the globe. We've got a set of insightful talks and crisis management ideas from some of the biggest names in the event industry. Even if it feels like the whole world has stopped, it's our firm belief that we can work together and overcome the challenges ahead. These special Creative Week episodes became a platform for people in the industry to share useful insights, know-how, solutions, and even mistakes that were made. Find out how to implement some specific tactics that could save your business, or get ideas on modifying your products or services to deal with the pandemic and the post-pandemic period. Hopefully, it will help you pass this test with flying colors.
In recent days, millions of us around the world have been thrown into working from home with very little or no preparation time. Whilst this will be a completely new concept to many people, I feel fortunate enough to have been able to practice and refine how I work from home since I began TC back in 2008. Over the years, I've had extended summers away from the office where I've worked remotely, and more recently, as I became mum to twin boys, I spent some time working from home. The big difference this time round is working from home 100% of the time and managing a team who are also working from home 100% of the time. In the past, I've managed teams as they've been on site at events or perhaps taken extended annual holiday or maternity leave where they've worked from home, but I've never had all of my team all working from home all at the same time. Once these difficult days are behind us, it will be interesting to see how our working habits develop and change. Previously, working from home for many employees was seen as a privilege and for employers as a luxury, allowing employees to manage their work-life balance better, both parties saving on costs, office, rent, transport, etc., positive benefits to the environment, and so on. Reflecting on the experience I've had to date on working from home, I put together 9 tips on how to make the most out of working from home. Number 1. Get a permanent workspace. Not everyone has the luxury of an office at home, so creating a corner with a desk, comfy chair, away from children, pets, other family members who may also be working from home during this time gives a quiet space to focus. Number 2, get your technology in order. Be based somewhere with a good Wi-Fi connection, set up your chargers for your laptop and phone and so on, and make sure you've downloaded whatever apps your company is using to communicate during this time. At TC, we're using Monday.com, WebEx, Slack, and Zoom. Number 3, set working hours and a routine. The beauty of working from home is setting hours around your family needs. I'm most productive first thing in the morning and like to be on my laptop by 6:30 a.m, then taking a break at around 8 a.m. to have breakfast with my children. I like to take regular breaks and have a definite finish time. Usually by 5:30 p.m, I'm not much use to anyone and my productivity very much decreases. Since working from home full-time, I now shut down my laptop at the end of the day, leave it on my desk so I can give myself a good rest away from it during the evenings. Number 4, write to-do lists. At the end of each day, I write my to-do list for the next day. When I arrive at my desk in the morning after a very short commute, I like to dive straight into work and know exactly what I have to do and what is a priority. I love ticking off completed items on my to-do list. It gives me so much satisfaction. Have regular team meetings. Now that all of my team is working from home, I have a daily call at 8:30 a.m. with my events team and 9:30 with my design team. On each call, each person goes through their workload for the day and what they need to achieve. This workflow is actually well managed through Monday.com, and these video calls aren't 100% necessary, but I like to do it for morale, for everyone to still feel like they're part of a team. It also helps everyone to get focused on the day ahead. The next one, get dressed. It's very tempting to stay in your pajamas all day, and I'm guilty of this on occasion. Getting dressed, brushing my hair, putting my makeup on makes me feel ready for the day and gets me into the mindset for work. It also allows me to be physically prepared if a client requests a last-minute video call. Avoid watching TV. I always have the radio and music on, and occasionally I put the news on in the background, but I am very strict with myself on not watching TV shows, which I feel is particularly important during this time of isolation, as my go-to TV series on Netflix is now a key part of my evening relaxation time. I don't want to mix business with pleasure. I also try to stay away from my personal social media during the daytime, as this is something I like to do in the evening too. Exercise and stretch. We all know the benefits of exercise, and I'm still finding my way with this. I'm very much used to working out outside, which we cannot do at the moment. Keep up your relationships. Whilst we cannot meet our colleagues face to face, I think it's important to keep the connection with all of my colleagues. So I'll send them individual WhatsApp messages to have a quick informal catch up, or perhaps a short phone call. The conversations are usually not work related, and the same informal chat that I might have in the office kitchen or perhaps the elevator. Mental health is a topic I am very interested in, and I feel during these days many of my colleagues could feel isolated and alone, so I feel as though I have a duty of care to regularly check in with the team. So there we have it, my 9 tips on how to make the most out of working from home in these unprecedented times. I'd love to hear your thoughts, opinions, so please feel free to reach out on the below contact information.
Hello, my name is Caroline Fox, and I am an attorney based out of Richmond, Virginia in the United States. Today we are going to talk a little bit about what force majeure is and what that means for your event-related contracts in relation to the COVID-19 crisis. Now, there are a lot of moving pieces here, and I'm not going to pretend like we're going to be able to cover them all in this short video. However, I highly encourage you to reach out to a lawyer in your locality who is going to be able to help you work through these very unusual times. First thing I want to talk about is, what is force majeure? Force majeure is essentially a contract doctrine that excuses or delays performance of a certain contract based on unforeseeable events, making it impossible to perform your duties under that contract. Now, you may have heard the phrase force majeure thrown around a lot in the past few weeks or so. But the important thing to remember about force majeure is it is a contract doctrine. So there has to be something written into your contract about force majeure events for force majeure to really apply. Now, there are 2 related concepts called the doctrine of impossibility and the doctrine of impracticability, which are very narrow interpretations, which is why we've got force majeure to kind of round them out, and we put those clauses into our contracts, because impossibility and impracticability are interpreted by courts as about this big. Force majeure allows you to kind of round things out, predict the future in a way, and carve out exceptions to the contract if those instances occur. Now, force majeure will apply when something makes it extremely difficult or impossible to perform based on different sets of circumstances that could have been foreseen. So things that we typically see in a force majeure contract are flood, fire, acts of God, or government mandate. Now, in the past, 120 years or so, we really haven't had to deal too much with pandemics, so you're not necessarily going to see pandemic language in your force majeure clause. However, we are in a place where government mandates to stay home, shelter in place, be on lockdown are becoming more and more frequent. So that language is going to trigger a force majeure clause. What does that mean for you? As someone in a contract that has a force majeure clause, you can either utilize the clause to make sure that you don't have to perform or pay penalties and damages for actually not performing, or you can use it to help delay and postpone your clients' events, your events with other vendors, move payment around, maybe be compensated for some of the brunt of the financial implications that the COVID crisis is causing. So it's very, very important to take a look at that force majeure clause to see what it can do for you. It's not going to be easy for someone to just say, oh, you have a force majeure clause, this is what it means. They are very, very, very strictly interpreted based on what you have in your contract. Now, how do you know if you're in a force majeure event? Well, it's pretty easy, because if it's written in your event and it's happening, or if it's written in your contract and it's happening, that's a pretty good indication that we're in a force majeure event. But to make it even easier, we've got a two-pronged test for you. One, is it something that has been named in your force majeure clause, or is it something that's extremely close to something that's been named in your force majeure clause? And two, is it causing performance under your contract to be impossible or extremely dangerous and or possibly deadly? Those are your two prongs. You have to satisfy both of those prongs for your force majeure contract clause to apply. Once you are in a situation where there is a force majeure event, then you have to figure out what your contract is telling you to do when triggered by those certain clauses. Now, a lot of people have thrown around the idea that force majeure means, oh, the contract's canceled. And that's not exactly true. A force majeure clause excuses or delays, remember? Excuses or delays performance under a contract where the party seeking the excuse or delay doesn't have to pay penalties or cancellation costs. So what I've been telling folks is it is not an attack mechanism, it's a defense mechanism. You can't necessarily sue someone for force majeure. It's not a cause of action. You could sue them for other things down the road, but actually suing someone for claiming force majeure as the complaint, it doesn't work that way. What force majeure will allow you to do is say, this performance wasn't completed and we shouldn't have to pay a penalty for not completing that service, providing that product, or otherwise fulfilling our duties under this contract. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense, because I think that's where people are getting confused. There are a lot of event professionals that I've spoken with whose clients or other event partners are saying that the force majeure event rescinds the contract. That's not necessarily true. Rescinding a contract means canceling a contract. And like we just said, that's not what a force majeure clause does. It excuses or delays performance. So if you have someone come to you and they say, oh, the force majeure event is happening, that means we're back to square one, as if the contract never happened, that's not necessarily going to be a correct statement. Now, if your contract says something along the lines of, if this contract is terminated, or if this contract is terminated due to force majeure, or if a force majeure event occurs, we will cancel the contract and refund all money to person A. Then you're in a situation where your contract is canceled and you would have to refund all of the money back to person A. However, your force majeure clause probably isn't going to say something like that if it was drafted by a lawyer. So take that clause and kind of pick it apart and know exactly what it means for you in what situation. What does it do for postponements and what does it do for cancellations? Now, we are going to see some situations where people are owing money and owing refunds under their contracts because of these force majeure events, because of the events that have been canceled because of impossibility, things like that. So what I have been instructing people to do is, again, look at your contract and see if there is any timeline or just any specific language around that cancellation and refund policy. Does it say that you're going to refund money in 30 days? Does it say you're going to refund money, within 10 days or immediately? Probably not. If it doesn't, then you can structure a repayment schedule that makes sense for you and doesn't terribly, terribly damage your cash flow into a situation where you're cash strapped. If your contract just says that under a force majeure event, the event's canceled, or that the other party will refund all except for the non-refundable deposit, or says something along the lines of, we'll only keep what we have earned under the agreement. There are options available for you so that you don't have to return all of that money right away. Now, I think that we can all understand the anxiety that our partners and our clients are facing in these circumstances, but you have to remember that people process anxiety and grief about canceled events, because it's okay to be upset about it. They process that in different ways. So if you have a client who is really hot under the collar about this, or a partner who is really not getting it, it might be best for you to take a step back and let them respond. Wait 24 hours before you respond to them. Maybe wait 6 hours. Maybe at least wait 2 hours. Maybe 24 hours is a little bit long depending on when their event is. If it's coming up really fast, obviously you're going to want to respond faster than that. But make sure you are giving yourself time to come up with a smart and well-informed answer instead of one of fear, as well as giving them time to kind of cool down a little bit from the initial shock of what's going on. All that being said, this all is really going to go back to what your contract states about force majeure, cancellations, and postponements. So I highly encourage you to contact a lawyer in your area, because they are going to be the ones that can help you navigate through this very, very strange time that we have not had to deal with in over a century. I hope that this was helpful. Again, my name is Caroline Fox. I'm a lawyer based out of Richmond, Virginia, and if you would like to find us online, you can find us at cjfoxlaw.com. Have a great rest of your afternoon and hang in there.
Everyone, and thank you for spending a little bit of time with me. My name is Liz King Caruso. I'm the CEO of Liz King Events here in New York City. And with everything that is going on, I'm really excited to talk to you today about community and how we can build community during a crisis. I think this is so important. I think anytime there is something going on in our lives that uproots what we typically know, people look to find community. They cling to each other. And I think this is such a great thing about human beings. People like to be together. I think actually that's why the events industry is so successful. This is what we do for a living. We bring people together. And in time of crisis, whether we can physically be together or not, I think it is our responsibility to do whatever we can to build community around different topics, the events that we host, different brands. Community in a time like this is more important than ever. So I just wanted to share a few tips for those of you who would like to build a community and would like to use that community to communicate and to share resources and to be a support for the people that you really care about who are part of your network. The first thing is you need to set up a hub for your community. You need a single place where people know that they can go to connect with each other. So obviously your website is typically the primary hub for your brand or your business. But what we're talking about here is a place where people can actually connect with each other. So Facebook groups, private Facebook groups tend to be one of the most common ways. If you find that a lot of your attendees or your users or your audience use Slack, that's another great option. I've even seen some people using Google Groups. It doesn't really matter what technology you choose. And for the sake of this short session, I'm not going to talk about too many options, but you do need to have one primary hub where everyone can connect with each other. Once you choose that, you want to make sure you communicate that to everyone and you do whatever you can to make sure that your whole audience participates and joins the group. And then you need to do a few things to increase that engagement. First of all, I encourage you to share information regularly. Again, especially during a time of crisis, people are looking for guidance. So that's why here in New York, we look every day for the mayor to be giving a press release for a press conference. We look for the governor, and we're looking at the president. We're looking on the worldwide scale as well. We like those daily updates. And even if it's an hour out of our day for every one of those, we want that information and people want that information. So you want to make sure you're communicating whatever information is important to your audience as regularly as possible. And yes, if you can kind of do it around the same time of day, if it's daily, that's great. It may not have to be that frequent. It might have to be more frequent. So you'll have to know your audience and what makes the most sense in terms of the kind of communication that you need to get out. But once you've established that, you want to do it as regularly as possible. You also want to encourage engagement. You want people to engage with each other and with your brand. And there are a few different ways that you can do this. One is, of course, asking people to introduce themselves and to find commonality. You may be able to create kind of breakout groups based on interest or based on topics, and that would be a good way for people to connect. I'm sure you have seen everyone in the world, it seems, is using Zoom or Cisco, all these group video platforms, and they're a great resource for you to get people to engage. So in addition to you sharing some content, it's also good to let your attendees share content with each other. So for example, we've been doing some happy hours or some breakfast coffee hours where people kind of bring whatever they want to their physical space and they join each other through group video chat. And it's a great way to get people to get to know each other. And it's also an outlet for them to vent a little, to talk about things that are going on, and to feel like they have a community. And those video chats require very little moderation, very little preparation. And I think they're a great way to make sure that you're increasing the engagement in your community. I don't think we're past the point of tweet chats or any kind of forum discussions, any kind of thing that you can post that people can also just participate in any time of day through comments, and they can share GIFs and things like that. That's one of the reasons why I like private Facebook groups, is because it's so easy for people to interact and they're constantly on that platform anyway. So they tend to see your content all the time. And you want to give them these forum discussions and other places to engage as well for those who either don't feel as comfortable doing the video chats or maybe don't have the time to join you. Another great thing about these communities is that they can really be a good time for some comic relief. So you can share some funny photos, you can share some funny videos, especially in a time of crisis. In the actual moment of crisis, you want to be as serious as possible and communicate information as clearly as you can. But as we kind of are going through the highs and lows of any crisis, there are moments where you'll find that it is appropriate to laugh a little bit, and that humans like to have fun. I always like to talk about that. And so it's important to find those moments and to do whatever you can, which again could be sharing like a simple meme or a funny video that gets people to laugh. And I think laughter is one of the best ways to get people to feel super connected to each other. Another thing you can do is offer resources. So whether it's a resource that your organization is offering or things you found throughout your industry, being the hub for people to find out information about these resources is going to create a loyalty to you, and it again will help with that engagement factor. So if you have a team of people who are out there scouring the internet trying to find things that would be helpful to your audience, or you're just managing whatever is being sent to you, however you do it, it's just really important that you are offering resources. And doing all of these different things will help you to create an audience who is engaged with each other and engaged with what you have to say. And this is a resource. It's something that you're investing your time in right now because there is a crisis, but it's something that can pay off for your brand for years to come. So these are things I want you to think about, these communities, not just in the short term, but for keeping these for years and years to come, because once people have this connection to you and they really understand that you care about them, that you've provided resources, you've communicated clearly, they're going to want to be more associated with your brand. And so I think it's really important to build these with the future in mind, to not just focus on the crisis, but to, again, add in those moments of levity and allow people to get to know each other and let these communities carry on far beyond the crisis. But in the moment, these communities are so key to helping people get through this. Of course, it's through the information, but again, more importantly, people need to connect with each other. And if you can become that platform that gives them an outlet to share their feelings, to connect with people who are going through things similar to them, it's great for your brand, but most importantly, it's great for the people. So those are my recommendations. If you have any questions about creating communities, please let me know. I've been doing it online for many years, and so I have lots of recommendations and best practices, and also maybe some things you shouldn't do. So those are my tips for today. Good luck, stay strong, and thank you for tuning in.
So first of all, welcome to everybody that is viewing this Eventex recording. Of course, we'll be addressing the hot topic of COVID-19, which has really choked a lot of businesses, and millions of people have been personally affected by it. But we don't want to talk about the general stuff that's happening. We are all living it, but actually want to see how is science and education affected in these times. At Canis Group, we organize conferences and events for tens of thousands of people each year, and we manage associations with as many members. So we've decided to look at the other side of things and address how will science and education be affected in the long run due to COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Magdalina Atanassova. I am Marcom and brand manager at Canis Group. And today with me is Louise Gorringe, the group's director of association management operations. Hi, Louise.
Hi.
So let's start things off, and let's discuss what's the current situation of medical associations right now. Like, what is the big picture of, and how does things look there?
Sure. Well, I mean, many of the associations that we work with are really having to stop and rethink and reformulate their plans for the coming 6 to 12 months. There are many things affecting them, but there are two key factors. First, there's a need to postpone their annual, biennial, their major meeting. And this is true for any non-profit that has their event usually in this first part of the year. But this puts a huge strain on the income stream of the association. Now, some have the reserves and the resources to handle this situation, but some don't. And that adds stress to the internal politics and the management of the association. So the second factor is, for us, the association field. Many doctors and nurses are being called on duty, whether they usually work in ICU units or the emergency rooms or not. So this means that boards that usually rely on the work of voluntary members can't do that, because the doctors and nurses, scientists, researchers are all being called to duty, if you like. So this is a risk for associations because many of the projects and activities are being held.
Yeah, it seems like actually quite a complex picture for them. So let's try to narrow things down a little bit. What are you and the association management team actually currently focusing on? Like, where is your support coming in, and how you're assisting associations in these tough times?
Sure. I mean, we're trying to help and support the associations by, well, first of all, carrying on with the usual work and relieving the boards of that work as much as possible. So we know our clients and the associations that we work with well enough to be able to do that, and they trust us to get on with the day-to-day job. But we're also focusing, or helping them focus on the long-term picture. You know, with some of the associations, we're reviewing the budgets to make sure that even, as a contingency without planned income, the association can make these changes to arrive safely in one piece on the other side of this crisis. So we're helping them to reformulate plans, but at the same time, we're also spotting any opportunities that may be present. In the form of delivering education effectively, supporting the community to connect and exchange valuable knowledge. These things are crucial right now. So we're not the doctors, we can't find the cure for the virus, but some of our clients are working directly with the situation, and I think we can do what we can to help them save lives.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about the education right now, because it's interesting how it is. Is it kind of stagnant because, we don't hold all the usual conferences, so the usual stream of knowledge exchange is not there, but at the same time, it appears to be that there's a need of just different education, just not what we've foreseen, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the lack of events is, of course, a strain on science and education. You know, it's where research results, learnings are shared. And in some cases, in many fields, we're missing that at the moment. However, there are many alternative forms of education. So, you know, e-learning activities, webcasts, moving events to be virtual. And in fact, we're seeing a big increase in webinars to share quick learnings, actually, from communities that are involved in this virus situation. Not every association is equipped with the resources to deliver digital or virtual education in such a short time. So it's about what resources and capabilities the association has that they can turn to. And that, as I mentioned, many associations are turning to webinars to teach their communities, whether it's nurses, doctors, and so on, whose specialty might not be ICU or ER, to actually learn some of the techniques, you know, how to use protective personal equipment, intubation, etc., and share the knowledge about how to do this with the teams that are going to need to learn how to do this quite quickly.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So we see a little bit of shift actually in the current situation, but in fact, nothing is going away. Like, associations need to be there actually more than ever to connect their communities, to connect between different associations, maybe even different fields, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the education is certainly not what we planned at the moment, but it's just shifting the form and delivery.
Yeah, and we also notice the same on the PCO side, as you mentioned. Many events are turning to virtual, but actually that's an interesting situation going on in among PCOs, if I can put it this way, where everybody is right now saying very loudly that virtual is the answer, where we observe that it's not always the answer. It is, to some extent. We are also, in fact, turning some events to entirely virtual, but we don't see many people addressing the fact that some researchers actually don't want their research online. They're very afraid of it being recorded and streamed online, right? Because it's sensitive, it's unpublished, and they're aware of the risks when they're in a live event situation. They can always warn, please don't make pictures of that slide, don't post it on social media, it's unpublished. We've seen it happen time and time again. But with online, they feel like the lack of control over the content. So it's interesting how people address that in other companies, or also virtual exhibitions for sponsors. Sometimes they are actually, they're not compliant, so they actually cannot proceed with the virtual exhibition. So I want to just raise that and kind of like a little note to everybody advertising virtual, that it's not the universal answer to everything. There's always something to consider. There are other, we're in a complex environment. Not everybody can be satisfied by the same solution. So that's
absolutely.
Yeah, it's tough times for sure, but let's try to be a bit more cheerful because there's always a silver lining somewhere there. So what do you think will happen after all this? What would be the positive outcomes for associations and education?
Well, I think I'm always trying to look for the silver lining, and I think that this crisis will make associations rethink the way that they're structured. Can they make decisions fast enough? Can they optimize operations? And in terms of education, I think everybody will be forced to rethink live events and keep the best research and science for those moments, and the hands-on training and the networking and the things that can't be replicated in a virtual environment. But certainly we'll see more that online education can be very effective in certain situations, and this will come to the fore.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also we'll be seeing a lot of integration between the different fields. Well, it's been happening naturally, but I think now just the situation's headed up so much more. So teaching, pediatric care doctors to learn ER and ICU, how to operate in such an environment to grown-ups. So it will be interesting to see how this shifts in the future. Of course, right now we can just predict and but we'll see in probably a few months. So that would be very interesting. So thank you, Louise, for your time. And I want to also thank everybody for tuning in and watching this short recap on what is happening in the world of PCOs and AMCs, associations, and education. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Loretta from Sage Wedding Pros. I want to give you guys some cash flow strategies to work with through an emergency or crisis. So I want you to be thinking about the defense and offense of your cash flow. Right now, we're going through coronavirus and our cash inflow is extremely tight, if not off completely. And so I would recommend that you take a look at your upcoming payments and determine what payments you have coming up every single month for the upcoming 12 months. So chances are you are expecting things to come this month and the next month, and they may be pushed out until the fall, winter, maybe 2021. So take a look at when that starts to catch up and match it with your expenses, your cash outflow, and any debt payments that you have. So you can really kind of see how much your cash dips into the negative over the next few months. What I'd like you to do to kind of improve the cash inflow is to go to those clients where you have, events coming up in the fall and winter or 2021 and let them know, hey, I'm a small business. If you want to support a small business, I'd greatly appreciate any advances you want to make on your final payment. And please support all of your wedding community as we're really struggling right now. I've lent this advice out to many people and they've had great success with it. I don't think there's any shame in asking for people to pay you early. Not everybody's going to be able to do it. People have their own economic concerns right now, but not everybody is in a place where their industry is being impacted as heavily, and they may gladly extend an early payment to you. So definitely keep that in mind. You should be thinking about financing options. The 3 options you should be exploring are SBA loans. There's a lot of information about the relief that they're now offering small business owners, and see if it applies to you. The benefit of working through them first, or seeing if it works well for you first, is that it's low interest and a long repayment term. The second option you should explore, if the SBA is not available to you, is a line of credit. Start with your bank first and see if they'll extend you a business line of credit. And last and worst option is credit cards. The interest is really high and you're going to be paying that off for a really long time. Regardless of whether you get any financing with your business, make sure that you determine what that repayment strategy is going to be and whether it'll choke you in your business over the long term of your business. So a $500 a month repayment plan over 5 to 10 years may be okay depending on the nature of your business. But if the nature of your business or the nature of the loan would require a $2,000 a month repayment plan, that may choke your business for a really long time, and I don't recommend it at all. So make sure that you know what those numbers are going to look like before you get yourself into a debt situation that you can't get out of regardless. You may have to adjust the number that you're trying to get in terms of financing to make it work for you. And then I want you to be thinking of defense, right? How can you cut out certain expenses? So everybody should be going to their landlord right now and asking for a rent pause, rent reduction, rent delay. Some people will be very generous, and it'll surprise you how much people want to work with you. Not everybody will be that generous, but I feel like if you start asking the question now, you can go back in a week, in 2 weeks, keep asking until you get what you want. Some cities and states may start mandating this in upcoming months. So they may be forced to. Rent is a big one. Staffing, you really need to consider what place your staff is taking right now. And this is a really hard decision that I don't take lightly, and I know you don't take lightly. I would start with examining whether you can cut back on hours. Most of our staff isn't as busy as they could be right now. You may have to lay off employees. The crazy thing is that like in the fall and the winter, once all these postponements happen, people are going to be very busy. So hopefully, ideally, there's a position for them to come back to. You are going to need help once all of these events start triggering off. So hopefully it's just a temporary layoff that they're facing. And then I want you to go through like the low hanging fruit. There's certain things that we're not spending money on right now. Gas, mileage, reimbursement, meals and entertainment, networking, right? So we can go and through our cash flow plan, our budgets, and really cut a lot of those expenses out, fortunately. There's also online software subscriptions. So I know just going through my own, I was able to cut out $100 a month, at least for the next few months. I can always go back to any of those services once, my business is a little bit more stable. So I'm not fearful of that at all. It's a temporary pause on some of those ongoing expenses. So anything you can do to improve the inflow, again, taking a look at those temporary postponements of payments happening later in the year, trying to get some of that money in now rather than later. And then definitely considering financing options. Try to keep that to a minimal bite so that it doesn't bite you over the long term of your business. And then do some expense budget triage and see where you land. Hope that helps. We're all going to come out from this better in the end. So I wish you all sorts of luck and reach out if you need any help.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Nora Shields, and I'm a co-founder of an online platform for wedding professionals and event professionals called Rock, Paper, Coin. And I'm here today to talk to you about managing current and future client worries among this new era of COVID-19. I'm sure a lot of your lives have been flipped upside down with coronavirus and everything it has affected. I also own an event planning company in the Pacific Northwest called Bridal Bliss, and we have had countless events reschedule and postpone. Pretty much everyone through about the end of May has pulled the trigger and decided on a new date. But there are others that are still holding tight and just kind of waiting to see what happens. So those clients, the ones that are basically in the next couple of months, are really who you should be focusing on right now. I definitely recommend reaching out to all of your clients, regardless of date. Just let them know you're thinking about them, see how they're feeling about everything. There might be some that want to reschedule regardless, even if they're scheduled for later this summer. So, some are a little more hesitant while some want to be more proactive. So definitely reach out, see how everyone's feeling. Also, just kind of to make that personal connection, whether it's a wedding, a social event, or a corporate event as well. We had a big conference reschedule, which was a total bummer, but I'm sure a lot of you have as well. So for those current clients that you're working with, keep checking in with them, have a contingency plan in place. I actually recommend speaking with them first to see how they're doing before reaching out to all of their vendors. I made the mistake of having a whole plan for my client before contacting her, and she was already set on pushing it an entire year. So it was a huge waste of time when I thought I was being helpful. So check in first, and then check in with all of the event professionals that are hired to work on the event. So caterers, venue, photographer. The most important ones are obviously those vendors that can only work on a single event per date. And with so many displaced couples, dates this summer through the fall, actually through the end of the year, dates are going to be a little difficult to come by, especially if it's a prime Saturday. So couples will probably have to be a little flexible, at least on a Friday or a Sunday or a month that maybe that wasn't their first choice. Also, it's quite possible that not all of these wedding professionals or event professionals are going to be available on the specific date that they want. So you will have to have the conversation with them about retainers and what's refundable, what's not. Obviously, review all of those contracts in advance, even before talking with them, so you kind of know what the expectation is. We found that most event professionals have been really flexible as far as rescheduling dates. or kind of switching things up, especially if there's more than one person that works for the company. So if it's a DJ firm or something like that, they can maybe send somebody else when the original DJ wasn't available and there's no extra fees. Obviously, there are some event professionals that aren't being as flexible, which is a little disappointing, but you'll just have to feel out your different teams per each event and see what they're thinking. So have a contingency plan in place. In a perfect world, you can just hold a future date without having to put down deposits and just get first right of refusal on them, just so we have kind of a little more time to digest what's happening and what potential dates are, because it's so up in the air. Nobody knows. We're hearing July and then we're hearing 18 months. So I don't know as much as the next person does. So I think contingency plans are key. And then just kind of see if they can sit tight for a little bit before making any rash decisions. For those weddings especially, I think all events this is important, but weddings are just so emotional that the couples are pretty heartbroken over it. So if the day come and goes when they were supposed to have their wedding, send a little something. I mean, it could be something as small as just a text to let them know you're thinking about them, or something a little more hefty like a care package, like a little relaxation kit, or maybe just some champagne and some cute glasses or something. A great way to support your fellow event professionals at this time, or just have something shipped. So they really feel taken care of and you're going to be top of mind when that next event rolls around. For those events that have decided to reschedule, you should absolutely be on top of the contract game. Contact all the vendors, make sure that they have a new contract set with the new date. Any fees or penalties or anything like that needs to be clearly noted. Some event professionals are asking for additional deposits just to tie them through the rest of the season, which I think is fair. But for those clients that are really nervous about losing money, like what if these wedding professionals don't stay in business through all of this? I think that's a very valid concern. So it might just have to be a negotiation between you and the wedding professional or the event professional and the couple to see what they're comfortable with. And hopefully you can meet in some sort of middle ground. But I think this is just such a difficult time for so many people. That most are being understanding, but they're also being rational as well. So they want to protect themselves. Obviously, if your events don't have insurance on the date yet, that's something that you absolutely need to look into. Some have been covered through all of this, others have not. I think one of the key things was if the event host wants to call it off just because they're not feeling comfortable about it, they're not necessarily getting any money from the insurance companies. But if the venue cancels, if it's physically impossible for them to have the event, then they might have a claim. But obviously, I'm not an insurance specialist, so that's something that you'll have to talk to whatever firm you decide to go through to kind of figure that out. But absolutely, insurance, if there's anything that can be learned through all this, insurance is key for not only your life, but your private events as well. Let's see. For those wedding professionals and event professionals, I keep saying wedding, but it's not just weddings. Stay in touch with those event professionals. Stay in touch with your clients through all this. I think some of it can wait for now, depending on how soon or how far away the event falls. But just, you want to stay top of mind, and you also want your clients to feel like they are being taken care of and considered and thought of and just not forgotten through all of this. We had a couple, I just have to share with you, a couple weddings that had to cancel and decided to scale way down. There was one this past weekend where they had like 200 people, this really close Irish Catholic family, and they love to party. So we've done several of their weddings and events, and they're always so fun. So it was so devastating for this couple to have to call off the big event. But they decided to go through with it. They followed the 10-person maximum rule and just had their immediate families come. They canceled their venue, which was this beautiful resort, and they rented a VRBO. And they had just their immediate families come out. They tried to stay apart as much as they could. They had an officiant. Their photographer and a musician actually ended up coming, which was kind of cool. But basically, our planner for the wedding put together a care package with them, with totally unexpected to them, but she had custom menus made. She had just like little things for the table so it would look really nice. And she had also reached out to a lot of the guests because several had been contacting us to see how they could support them. And she had, they had sent in different ways they were thinking about them. So they'd either sent like pictures or written a little something. So Molly, their planner, put it together in a care package and sent it with their whole box of supplies. But the best part that I have to share with you is, as a surprise to them, we coordinated a virtual cocktail hour with all of their guests. So all their guests, not all of them, but probably 60% of them, got all dressed up and got on a Zoom conference and had a glass of whatever they wanted to toast with. And they all got to take turns saying a little toast to the bride and groom. And it was so sweet. And the couple was just so surprised and so thankful. But just kind of a cool way to still make it really special for your clients through this time. If they do have to scale down, obviously their dream of their perfect wedding was kind of crushed. So obviously this will be very memorable for them and something that will make a great story in years to come. So whatever way you can make it special, whether it's a corporate event or a wedding or any kind of social event, it's very easy to do, and it's something that your clients will definitely remember. And it's easy for them to recommend you when you do little things like that. As far as future clients go, you still need to answer your inquiries as quickly as possible. And obviously, I know that's difficult for those of you working with family around, especially kids that you're trying to homeschool or anything like that. But it is still really important to respond to inquiries really quickly and efficiently. Follow up, do all of the same things that you would normally do if we were not in this mess. One plus for people inquiring right now that you have is they need to book something. They need to book a space immediately because all of these displaced couples are trying to reschedule their dates. So there's going to be a lot more competition for dates in the winter, in the spring, next summer. So, there's definitely a sense of urgency to book and get things started. And especially early on, there's so much that can be done digitally and over the phone or on your computer. So you can definitely get started. If you have a program you're using like Rock, Paper, Coin, where you can send digital invoices or receive digital contracts, that's going to save you quite a bit of time. We holed up in a little mountain town in Central Oregon with my family for the time being and came to realize there's no printer here. Whoops. So being able to do things digitally is a huge plus for me right now. And I think it is for a lot of people. Might have to go home to my home office sooner than expected. But regardless, definitely you have a little pull with those new inquiries that are coming in to get them to book quicker so you can work with them, because cash flow is a problem for a lot of people right now. So if you're getting deposits from these new clients, it's really going to help tie you over through these next several months, which who knows what's going to happen. So all in all, basically, my best advice is to communicate well and to communicate often. Keep in touch with your current clients, with your new clients, and try to book more business through this whole time. So I wish you all the best of luck, and we will get through this together. Bye.
Thank you for watching. We've created a dedicated Facebook group for you to share your thoughts or ask your questions. Simply go to the Eventex Awards Facebook page and join our community group.